Hello there, everyone. Okay, it's a new season. We've got a new card. We've got Shadowlands Daredevil. Let's show you what he's about. So, Shadowlands Daredevil is a 2-cost, 3-power card with the text on reveal. Shuffle in 3 demons. We've seen the demons before via the HUD. They are a 1/6 stat line vanilla text. When you draw a card with 6 or more power plus 2 power, that's the rest of Daredevil. So, essentially, what we're getting with Shadowlands Daredevil, we are gaining 3 demons in our deck, which isn't ideal in terms of deck dilution. But then we have got the ability to gain power on Shadowlands Daredevil if we draw cards with 6 or more power. So what we really want in this deck is a lot of high power cards. Okay, so what kind of stuff is going to work with Daredevil? So the first thing that comes to mind is that we recently had a couple of buffs in the latest OTA. They mentioned Martyr and Captain Marvel as 2. Martyr was a 1/5 stat line, it is now a 1/6 stat line. The downside of Martyr is always going to be that text reads, she will move location to lose you the game. So you really need to find ways of preventing her from moving, either by filling up your board or by removing her ability. So there is a negative to her, but the stat line is a very big positive to have her in a deck. Then we've got Debris. Debris, obviously above 6 power, so it will trigger the power gain on Shadowlands Daredevil. But Debris's actually been quite good of late when we've had Ozymandias arrive into the game, so I feel like you might be able to slot Shadowlands Daredevil into a deck like that. And then the last one I came up with was Crossbones. And Crossbones really was meant to typify anything that's got big stat lines. So I put that down purely because Crossbones' text is to play it on a winning lane. But you could swap this out with anything like Cull Obsidian, with Gladiator, with Lizard. Just anything that's got a very chunky stat line, because essentially that's what we're aiming for here. You could just go for big numbers and Daredevil's just benefiting off them. So nothing too complicated about the cards that work with Shadowlands Daredevil. And let's add to that, there isn't actually too much that counters it either. The obvious counters are going to be things like Deafening Chord. If you remove the text of Shadowlands Daredevil, it's just a 2/3 that doesn't gain power. It will have had its on reveal, but not much else. There's Red Guardian, similar effect. It will just stop it gaining power. And I went for a weird one there with Black Widow. Now, I'm not saying anyone should start throwing Black Widow in the decks willy-nilly, but one thing this Shadowlands card will be benefiting from is drawing cards. So if you can prevent a draw with Black Widow, you're reducing the amount of power it gains. But let's be real, it's probably not enough of a benefit to include it in the deck. Black Widow really needs some love. One other thing I didn't mention was Cosmo. Obviously, it's not going to be ideal, but if we're talking about the on-reveal effect, if you can prevent that, that would be good. But again, you would have to have Prio. They wouldn't be playing Shadowlands on tempo, so it'd be like turn 3 with you having priority. But I just want to put it out there, it is an on-reveal card, so Cosmo will actually counter it, potentially. So, let's move on to the next card of the month. We'll come back to Daredevil in a minute in terms of deck ideas, but for now, let's move on to Karen Page. So, Karen Page, she is going to be a 4-cost 5-power card with the text, on reveal, give a friendly 1, 2, and 3-cost 3-cost character plus 2 power. So, it's a very simple ability. It's nothing too flashy. With the cost that she's got, 4 cost, it doesn't really scream that you'd want to repeat this with a Wong or something. You might want to Odin it, but more practically, you just want to play it out and buff some cards that are already on the board. So when it was coming to cards that synergize with Karen, I was thinking, well, what would you like to buff? Now, Patriot itself is not the card I was looking to buff, but mainly the idea of what Patriot represents. We would have squirrels on the board, we'd have rocks on the board, we'd have tokens of all sorts. For me, they would be good Karen targets. And say if you've got a Sinister Clone, that is a token card, it's something that would be nice to buff. So all these small, not so massive cards that just want a little bit of extra power, Karen would like to buff them. Then, Captain Carter. Now, this again feels a little bit odd, but I did like the concept I got in my head, and you'll see this in the deck idea I came up with, that Captain Carter is obviously going to benefit from being given power. So if you have got a 1-2 and she's the 3, it's only 2 power, but when you're trying to buff Captain Carter anyway, that's actually not a bad buff for her. So certainly not one to sleep on that. And then the other one I came up with was Mysterio. He's not a 2-4 anymore, he's a 2-5. Sorry about the incorrect image. It's now on reveal, add an illusion to another location, and then activate, swap locations. Well, swap the power on the locations. So I feel like there could be some interesting synergy there, because Karen could increase the power of both Mysterios. And then one of the things that is going on right now with Mysterio is you also play Luke Cage. And that way, the Mysterio that is the illusion, when you swap the cards, both will keep their power. So in theory, you're playing a 2-5. Karen takes them up to a 2-6 and a 2-1. But then when you do the swap, they would both be a 2-6. So you'd have effectively a 2-12 for 3 cards worth of play. It sounds like a lot of effort, that, and I will agree it is a bit awkward, but I kind of like the idea of it. Let me know what you think. All right, so counters. Cosmo. Yeah, the good boy, the bad boy. Depends what you think of him. We've also got Goose here. Naturally, Karen's a full cost card, so yeah, Goose kind of stops Karen doing a thing if you want her in a certain lane. I wouldn't say it's the biggest counter, but it can still be a bit annoying. So yeah, I thought I'd throw Goose in there, because I don't think Goose has had enough mentions of late, especially since he got a quote-unquote buff with being able to stop 7-cost cards. And then Shadow King. Karen's doing a thing. Shadow King can just come in and say, right, I'm wiping the board clean. I'm getting rid of all that you've just done. So yeah, Shadow King again. Just one of those annoying little pests. Now, the next new card of the week. Wilson Fisk. Fisk is a 5-cost 9-power card with the text. Costs 3 if you have the highest power card in play. So, very, very simple text. I actually like this card for that reason. I mean, I saw a comparison in Regis's video to Mockingbird. And I did think that was interesting, because Mockingbird started out as a 5-9. Her text is obviously cost gets reduced by 1 for each created card on the board. This is different, but very similar in that it does have a limit. Obviously, it can only go to 3. It can't go higher or lower. It's set at 3. But I would say it's a fairly easy trigger. You know, have the highest power card in play. You could do that quite easily. So let's just show you some of the things I came up with. And I've done this a little bit differently. Usually I do synergies and counters, whereas this time I just wanted to show cards that would naturally be playable, if you like, on curve. So we've got Ebony Moore. I mean, 1-7, you're going to be winning your location if you've got that on the board. The first Ghost Rider. Now, I had a little bit of a weird idea about how to concoct a deck like that. I haven't nailed it down, so I haven't included it in the video, but it was something along the lines of playing first Ghost Rider, Iron Man, but I just didn't know where to go from there. I mean, again, you could maybe go another way with Goblins and try and just play that, but including Fisk in that just seems a bit odd. So I'll keep cooking, but I did want to throw it in there because obviously it's the highest power 2-cost card we have at a vanilla stat line. But you could probably just sub that out for a Lizard, a Maximus. Then we've got Starbrand, that's the highest cost 3-cost card. Part of the reason I'm mentioning some of these cards like Starbrand, we've got Techno-Organic Virus that came out last month. That is a good way of just silencing the negative effects of these cards, so it is worth keeping in mind. We've got Ares. If you were to play a deck that included any of these cards, Ares is going to love it because he compares the top 3 cards of both decks, and if you've got the higher power, he'll gain 6 power. So, very good way of keeping your tempo going. And then we're just going for Red Skull and Infinite because, you know, again, you wouldn't really be playing these on tempo, would you, right? Like, if you've got Wilson Fisk, you would be hoping that your 1 and your 2 costs would be enough to get Fisk down to a 3. But let's assume you haven't drawn Fisk. I like the idea that then you've got high cost cards that would allow you to keep the tempo up. So that's the way I was thinking about it. And then maybe, like, say you didn't draw your Infinite, but you played your Ares, your Red Skull, you could still be trying to play Fisk with another 3 like Starbrand turn 6. That was where my mind was going. There is one card, though, that when I was doing all this, it escaped my mind until the very last minute. Ezekiel Sims. I couldn't help but think about his text, where he will move if you have greater power on the card you played than himself. So, he feels like the ultimate priority chaser. So, you could play in turn 2. Turn 3, you could play, for argument's sake, Silk and Batroc. Silk would make Ezekiel move, and then Batroc would move with Silk. Oh, and Batroc. And Ezekiel, sorry. Oh, no, sorry, it'd just be Silk. Sorry, I'm keeping this confused in my head. But that would then reduce Fisk, most likely, which would then mean you could play Fisk. I probably haven't nailed that down in terms of play lines, but I did like the thought of it, that there might be some synergy there. But let me know if you think I'm just coping a bit there, because I feel like Ezekiel's been underplayed since he came out. There is something to him. Anyway, let's get into decks. Let's move my cam again. I feel like I forget to do this every week. So Devilish Rocks is the first deck we're coming up with. And I want to go for a deck that was a bit like that Patriot Annihilus deck we've had in the past. So we've got a few cards here that probably we don't want to debuff. Like, for instance, we've got a Rhino. We don't want to debuff Rhino. But by debuff, it's the Valkyrie we're referring to. Similarly, we've got Ozymandias, we've got Debris, we've got Supergiant, Viv Vision. None of these won't go down to free power. That's why Luke Cage is here. Now, I know the simple answer to that is, well, why are we playing Valkyrie and Luke Cage? I like the idea of just being able to negate the negative of the HUD. Plus, I've said this very recently, for me, Valkyrie is one of the most underrated tech cards in the game, and it's purely because she's hard to put in decks. You know, you've got to be able to find a way of benefiting from the effects she creates. So I have put Luke in here, but this is where we've got Astral Projection as well. In my mind, I'm thinking, right, let's say turn 6. I've got Valkyrie, Luke Cage in my hand, and I can't play them both. Astral Projection is that get out of jail card for us, where we can play Astral and then Luke Cage, and we just protect what we've done. For me, I think that's a really good idea, but we'll only know when we play it. This is the one I'm looking forward to playing the most when we get a chance. I don't know. Again, let me know what you think, because I think there's something to this. We've got what feels like the core of an Ozymandias package. We've got Supergiant for a bit of tech in case anyone's trying turn 5 shenanigans. But then we've got a way of keep playing these cards out and keeping the power of the demons and all these high-cost cards. So, yeah, let me know what you're thinking. All right, full admission, this title just became a bit of a meme. I actually threw Cosmic Ghost Rider in here just so I could run the title. You could probably throw any other card in. But I want to do an Aurora deck with Karen Page. Now, is it this going to be good? I'm not entirely sure. I was starting this out as a Spectrum deck. I was going to put in Goliath. I was going to put in Moonstone. Well, actually, I did put Moonstone, sorry. I was going to go full on going. But then I started to realise, you know what? I could probably do a bit of a mix, because Karen's on reveal. We've got... well, I was going to do Spectrum but as on reveal. But then it essentially just occurred to me, why not just go full on Aurora? So we've got a bit of end of turn in terms of the Thing. We've got Hydra Bob. So only 2 end of turns, sadly. We've got a couple of activates. We've got Jack Flag just to boost ongoing power. It's nothing crazy. In fact, I probably do need to mix the deck up a bit more just to try and give Aurora more targets. Maybe it is too heavily leaning into the Spectrum side still. But I just like the idea of what it's doing. Now, the downside, as my head is not so conveniently covering, if I just move my cam again. There it goes. This is a very costly deck. It's 8 Series 5 cards, 1 Series 3 card, and a Series 1 card. So I 100% don't blame anyone for going, I cannot run this deck. And what I would say to that in response, a lot of this deck is subbable, I would imagine. Like, this is me just goofing around, just trying to cook something up that seems a bit fun. But you could go full on Spectrum, as I said. I lent into Aurora more than I probably need to. Whereas I honestly think that you could go, right, we'll have Spectrum, we'll have Iron Man, Claw, Mystique. You know, you could do all of that, and then Karen's just there to buff them up a little bit. So, honestly, I kind of went more memey towards the end here. Yeah, especially with that title. I just wanted... For some reason, I like the idea of Cosmic Ghostwriter. But, well, she's a writer, isn't she? But yeah, I just like the idea of it. But you could definitely go for a cheaper version of this. Sadly, stuff like Moonstone is still quite expensive for an ongoing shell. But I imagine you could still create something a little more cheaper, shall we say. And then the final deck we've got here, Nightmare Fuel. Now, before I say anything else, I just want to point out that Friday's video is going to feature Nightmare. That is on my free-to-play account. And yes, I advise you to watch that. But when it comes to this one, I wanted to try and just keep the same idea as what we've stated here, which is that we're trying to do a bit of tempo building. So we've got a lot of high-power cards. We've got a few not so high in terms of Nightmare is obviously switching powers, sorry, switching abilities. We've got Sauron to silence the negative ongoings. There's a few awkward things going on, but I feel like Fisk should sing in this kind of shell. Now, if you were to say to me, what about Ezekiel Sims? I'll be honest, when I do a video, I will probably do Ezekiel Sims instead of this, purely because I've just done Nightmare. But I do think this kind of build does have potential, because even though Fisk doesn't fit the play line in terms of the big number, the fact that he can reduce his cost just means that he's playable if you're struggling to get, say, an Infinite or Giganto in the location you want. It just gives you an option to maybe do a Starbrand combo at the end. So, yeah, I think there's something to it, but I might be coping again, so let me know what you think. So that is it for this week's video, folks. Now, quick disclaimer before we go. I am not actually going to be able to cover these cards at the start of the week, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm just not able to get the pass until next week. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to wait till next week to do some of these new cards. And I've got the tokens where I could get, say, Karen Page, but the trouble is I could also pull Wilson, which would then feel bad because I'd be getting a card that I'd be getting with the pass. So I'm just going to wait a week until I can actually get it. So, yeah, unfortunately, I can't cover these cards live. So what I'm planning to do on tomorrow's video and Thursdays, I'm going to just try and show you some decks I'll be using to climb against these cards, essentially. So maybe well, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do right now, but I've got a feeling it's going to involve some destroy. We'll have a think about it. But if you're interested in that, folks, please tune into my channel. I'm going to say I'm trying to do 5 videos a week. So yesterday we did the tier list. You've obviously got the deck preview here. We'll do 2 gameplay videos next 2 days showcasing things that I'm using on my climb. And then Friday is free to play day. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, please hit the like button on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. And I'll be back soon with another Marvel Snap video. Until then, folks, have a good rest of your day. Goodbye for now.